Welcome to today's presentation, Cannabis Prevention Campaign, Planning and Implementation. It is my pleasure to introduce our presenter today. Eric Escudero has served as the Director of Communications for Denver's Office of Excise and Licenses since March of 2018. Excise and Licenses is the central business licensing department for the City and County of Denver and includes the Office of Marijuana Policy. Escudero is responsible for leading communications to support policy and regulation of all the business licenses issued by excise and licenses. This includes orchestrating and executing communications and marketing strategies to support regulation of Denver's marijuana industry and marijuana youth prevention and education. With Denver, he is responsible for overseeing Denver's high-cost education campaign focused on teaching Denver's youth about the laws, the potential effects of underage marijuana use, both socially and physiologically, and to give youth a better overall understanding of marijuana. Escudero has more than 20 years experience in public relations and the media. I will now turn the time over to Eric Escudero.
And I also want to thank everybody for joining me today. We always like to share what we're doing in marijuana youth education and prevention. As many of you know, the City and County of Denver, Colorado was the first major city in the United States of America to have a legalized retail or recreational marijuana market. And so we thought about all the things we had to accomplish after our voters told us they wanted us to make this happen. One of the most important things we thought is we have to protect our youth because, you know, whatever side people are on, whether they're pro legalization or against legalization, our role was not to take a side, but to make sure our community was safe. And one of the top priorities, if not the top priority of our mayor, is one of those negative predictions was that we would see youth usage skyrocket. We see a lot more youth using underage marijuana. And our goal was to make sure that didn't happen. And that's where our high costs campaign comes into play. Before we get started, I want to talk to you about kind of the City of Denver's approach to this, because it's not just our youth education and prevention campaign, the high costs. We have a five-pronged approach when it comes to our marijuana education efforts. We have our youth prevention, and that is our Office of Children's Affairs. They do youth programming, free after school and summer programming that we offer to youth throughout Denver, and it's been very successful. In fact, they actually sell their curriculum to other communities. I believe they just, the state of Alaska is going to use Denver's curriculum now as far as your youth prevention campaign, those after school programs that not just focus on marijuana education, but healthy lifestyles. And then you'll look down and you'll see youth diversion. That's for the kids who get off that yellow brick road in life, giving them an opportunity to have success. So that's been something that's positive. We also, it's important to have public awareness. That is just educating the entire public as far as what are the rules, because just because marijuana is legal in Colorado and in Denver, it doesn't mean you can use it anywhere. There are rules, associated laws that people have to follow. So we concentrate on that. And then we have data collection. We have a local hospital that collects data for us so we can find out if we're seeing a surge in people visiting emergency rooms because of marijuana related issues. And last, but hopefully not least, is our mass marketing campaign, what I'm going to talk about with you today. And that is our high cost campaign for our youth prevention and education. Let's start with the budget, because anytime you're going to do a program, you know, it's not free and you're going to have money to do this. And so I want to give you kind of an idea as far as the funds we use in Denver, how we get those funds to pay for these efforts, like our high cost campaign and everything that's associated with having a successfully regulated marijuana market. So what we do is we have a special tax on recreational marijuana. It started out at 3.5%. And then I believe it was October in 2018, we bumped it up 2% to cover some of these expenses. Of course, you have to have the regulation. You have to have who's issuing the licenses, who's doing inspections of these facilities, whether they be retail stores or the cultivation or places that are doing growing, or the other marijuana licenses that we offer in Denver associated with this business. And that makes up about 9%. And we also have about 9% for enforcement. This is when, unfortunately, when people are breaking the laws, We have to have our Denver Police Department to go out there and make sure and have enforcement. Public health is also very important. One of the things that people didn't think about when legalization occurred, they just thought about, well, you just sell it and you have stores. Well, we also have to make sure that we're testing the product. So one of the challenges has been that people didn't think about probably when legalization first happened in Denver and Colorado in 2014. Our first sales began January 1st in 2014, is making sure there's pesticides, we're checking on pesticide usage. So there is these cultivation centers that are using pesticides. And there also has been occurrences where there has been high levels of mold on the cannabis that's being sold. And so we have a public health department that goes out and checks and does testing on it. We've actually issued, our public health department has actually issued recalls when they have found unacceptable levels of mold. So that's a real big part of it. And then you see that a big chunk there for improvement to city facilities. The funds all go into our general fund and is distributed. And so marijuana tax funds in Denver have been used to fill potholes. We had a local news broadcast that did a funny story. They called it Pot for Potholes. We've also used some of the money to build a recreation center, and the first urban recreation center in Denver. So one of the things about helping out our youth is giving them other things to do where they can go out and they can play some basketball or go to a youth rec center. And so that's part of the improvement to city and facilities. And then when we increased the tax on just recreational marijuana from 3.5% to 5.5%, that 2% was dedicated entirely to helping or at least contributing to an affordable housing fund, because here in Denver, we've seen our population surge. A lot of people love Colorado, a lot of people love Denver, and they're moving here, and cost of living has gone up. So we want to make sure there was opportunities to build affordable housing. And so you'll see that big chunk there, 37%. But lastly, education there, 5%. That's where our funds come out for our high cost campaign. And that's where our funds come out for our Office of Children's Affairs to do their youth prevention. This is the data collection, everything that's associated with youth prevention and education. We have that 5% pot of money to do that. And I said pot, that was not intentional. Let's take a look at the overall high cost campaign, kind of what we wanted to do with this campaign. We knew that we needed to have something to reach out to our kids, a marketing campaign where we could reach them. And so we developed the campaign to educate Denver youth on how underage marijuana can affect their passions, pursuits, and future. The campaign, as you see, it really does the following. It helps Denver youth understand the legal, health, and social risk. And we want to have relatable messaging to give youth the facts that they need to make responsible decisions, not to use underage. And we want to provide that perspective that hopefully sparks discussions with their peers and proves that being high is not the social norm. That's a real important thing to us, because a lot of people think that everyone is doing it. And we wanted to make sure and show Denver youth that no, if you are someone who chooses to do marijuana underage, you are outside the norm. You are different than everybody else. And so that was a real big part of why we decided to do this campaign. So we'll look at year one, as you see a couple of examples of year one of our campaign, our marketing campaign across Denver. And there's a billboard that was on a school bus in Denver that showed 74% of teens were not using underage marijuana. And then we also had a billboard you'll see there, Puff, Your Tuition Is Gone, one of the high costs of marijuana. We're really focusing on the facts in this campaign, not scare tactics that you saw in the 80s and maybe 90s with this is your brain on drugs, or just say, no, we want to give kids the facts, not scare tactics. And I'm going to go into a little more of that as we go along in my presentation today. So our year one overall strategy, as far as what we wanted to do to define the strategic direction of the campaign, we conducted a pre-campaign survey to gauge attitudes, awareness of usage regarding marijuana among Denver youth. So we want to talk directly to Denver youth, hear from them, because what better way to develop a campaign than actually talk to the youth and find out what things would catch their attention so it would be effective. So we started a youth commission, was formed, made up of a diverse group of Denver teens. We held sessions they're structured to create a conversation among youth participants about their attitudes about marijuana and how they encounter the topic in their daily lives. The information garnered from the survey and our youth commission, it uncovered some key learning that youth don't want to be told what to do in regards to marijuana. They want the facts and be able to make their own responsible decisions. Breaking news, teenagers don't like to be told what to do, but it was helpful for us just to hear that from them as we developed this campaign. We also found that peer-to-peer influence is incredibly important. That kind of, we thought that, and it kind of reinforced our thoughts about that. And the campaign also needed to facilitate conversations about youth to make a true impact. Teens, unfortunately, they listen to their friends more than they listen to their parents. And so we thought, as we're developing this campaign and hearing from the teens, what we want to do is give them accurate information so they can have accurate peer-to-peer conversations. So when they're talking about it, decisions to use, to not use, if they're facing those peer pressures, they would be armed with the facts, not something that's going to scare them, not preaching to them, just giving them the facts. And so we use these findings to create the high cost campaign, dedicated to educating youth on marijuana so they make the responsible decision not to use marijuana. Additionally, 6 months into the launch of the campaign, another youth commission was held to solicit additional feedback to help us, just to reinforce and see if we were being successful. Here's the target audience you see on this slide, 12 to 17-year-olds in the city and county of Denver. And we wanted to make sure that the youth didn't feel like the social norm, as I told you, and prevent and educate youth surrounding marijuana usage and its effects. Year one, here's kind of the things we did. We created a website. We had billboards, as you saw earlier, school bus ads you saw earlier. And also when you think about where are youth at these days in here 2020, or back when this campaign was launched a couple of years ago, digital radio and video. Kids love to listen to places like Pandora. We wanted to reach them where they're at. And that includes social media. So going to sites, whether it be Instagram, Snapchat, Facebook. We also had rat cards, and we had a classroom in a box set, kind of a Trivial Pursuit game that I'm going to tell you about here in just a minute. I want to give you an example of something really unique that we did. I think, as far as I know, we're the only people who've ever created a marijuana game show. And it was called Weed It Out. And what we did is we got together, I think it was 39 youth from Denver who volunteered to participate in this game show. And we wanted to cut up like snippets of this and use this for that content that we were sharing on social media and digital radio and places where youth are at. And so I'm going to give you a look at kind of what the game show was. And then at the end of it, we actually, part of the content, we actually asked teens some questions so teens could hear from other teens.
Colorado was one of the first states to legalize marijuana, but how much do Denver teens really know about weed and the cost of underage use? All right, what is an edible?
I'm gonna have to go with A.
She's gonna go with A. What is it? What percentage of Denver youth see regular marijuana use as a risky behavior? Oh, what is the answer, boy? Oh, A!
I feel like as a teenager, you hear a lot about the benefits, but a lot of these kids don't understand what they're doing to their health, talking about how their brain isn't developed until they're 25.
So there you kind of see, you'll see what that was about there. So it was great to hear from those teens, and they did a great job. We crowned the champion, and the content was really engaging. Unfortunately,
in other words, losing your scholarship.
Unfortunately, what we want to do is we want to make sure that it's something that catches their attention, because the attention span of youth, unfortunately, is not very long. So we had to get things to pull them in and to make them want to watch more and learn more and listen to the facts. And so they have those accurate peer-to-peer conversations. We also, as I briefly mentioned, we created something called a classroom in a box game, because we want to get this out to where teens were and in schools and youth education programs across Denver. And it's kind of like a Trivia Pursuit game where it had lots of questions about marijuana and the facts, once again, whether it be also some history of it and the laws. And we've watched some of these youth play these games in their classrooms and after school programs. And they loved it. It was just teaching them the facts about things. And it was very successful. We created 200 of these and distributed them throughout Denver, and they were all used. And we don't have any more left, so we might have to create some here in the future again if we continue to get interest in it. You see one of the questions there: what is the most commonly used testing method to tell if a person has been using marijuana? Just not scare tactics, not this is your brain on drugs, but just facts about cannabis and usage and laws and things such as that. So we had year one was a huge success, and then we had a problem. We had to figure out how we were going to build on this success in year two because we had so much success. And so we expanded the audience. The first year it was 12 to 17-year-olds. The second year we expanded it one more year to 12 to 18-year-olds. And the problem we looked at is we have to continue to make sure youth grasp how underage marijuana use can affect their lives, and continue to find ways to prevent and educate youth around underage marijuana use and its effects. And we had, once again, we heard from youth. We assembled our youth panel and heard from them and get their thoughts as far as what they were thinking about marijuana, because the age groups are constantly changing. The 18-year-olds, the 17-year-olds are getting out, and then we have a whole new group of 12, 13-year-olds that we have to reach. So it's, we have to make sure we're keeping pace with what's changing out there in the world. And in year two, we had with the website, we continued to update thehighcost.com is the website, thehighcost.com. We also created posters, which we're now distributing to schools that have some great images that kind of gets kids thinking about the high costs of it. I continue to do the school bus ads, the digital radio, and social media. And we also did ambient execution as well, and I'll explain that in a minute. I want to give you another look at kind of what the campaign was. The second year, we didn't do the game show again. We created these short animated videos to kind of catch their attention as advertising we buy on social media sites or the digital radio, and we get placement. And so before a kid would play a video game on the video game platform, or if they're on YouTube, they want to see something like this.
In other words, losing your scholarship to a marijuana charge is a straight up waste of money. Learn more at thehighcost.com.
So as everybody knows, college is pretty expensive these days, a lot more expensive than even I was going to college back in the Stone Age. So that's something that truly impacts them, because kids have these hopes, these aspirations. A lot of them want to go to college. And that is something that, just a high cost of using marijuana underage, how it can impact you. And that's something we found that, caught their attention, made them think twice about, decisions when it comes to whether they're going to use underage or not. Here is the website, give you kind of an idea. No bull, just the facts. And in other words is kind of how we switched it up in year two. We wanted to take a look at what things we could change to make it better with that youth commission. And so in other words is kind of one of the themes we used. In other words, and then you fill in the dots as far as like what you saw the ad with scholarship, like your brain develops to the age of 25. Talking about how it can impact you if you play sports, because it can slow you down. So just kind of things like that. And that makes sense to people. It's easy to understand for youth. And so they could grasp the message, and hopefully it would help them make good decisions not to consume underage. Here's another just example of something else we did. We created an online quiz this year because we wanted to see if the message was resonating with youth, and we've seen a lot of success with this online quiz. We want to get them engaging with the messaging more online, and it was kind of our extension of our physical classroom in a box that we did in year one, but more of a digitally accessible way, because kids are just online these days. And so we want to give them an opportunity to take the quiz and maybe challenge their friends to take the quiz. We launched it last July, and we've had a lot of success with it. 96% of the youth who have taken the quiz have finished it to completion. They're interested in this. They take the quiz, and many of them have taken it again just to see how they do. So that was something that was really important to us, to give them that digital outlet where they can participate. And as they're taking the quiz, obviously they learn more information about underage marijuana usage and the high costs that are associated with underage marijuana usage. We also, something we were happy to do this year, we want to make sure and reach our youth who are primarily Spanish speakers. The interesting thing about this is, after extensive studies, we found that kids of families who speak primarily Spanish, most of them still speak English. So it wasn't a huge focus on it for us, but we didn't want to leave any kid behind. We want to make sure maybe there's a child who primarily speaks Spanish, that they feel like they can learn this information to include as many youth as possible. And so it was very important to us to also do a website in Spanish. So this is part of our expansion in the 2019 and still going here in 2020. And these are some of the posters. I talked about the posters earlier. I wanted to give you kind of an idea as far as seeing what those posters look like that were distributed to Denver public schools. Just more of that message about things that they think about that's relatable to them. This one with the banana was one of my favorites. It kind of gives you an idea of something that's really important about when it comes to cannabis consumption, that your brain isn't ripe to the age of 25 and you see those green bananas, and hopefully that helps them relate, and also just your energy level, your motivation. Don't drain your battery. And I think most youth are on their phones a lot. And so that's something that resonates with them as far as having that low battery, because they don't want that in their phone. And I'm sure they don't want that in life. And, it's up there in schools. You walk into a lot of different public schools, you'll see these posters. And hopefully that seeing that every day will help reinforce this important message. Not scaring them, but just giving them the facts. One of the exciting things we did last year just was we're looking for ways to expand it. How can we find ways to reach more youth than we're already reaching through those traditional channels, whether it be social media or digital radio or places like that? Is we decided we were going to do an ambient execution. And what an ambient execution is, it's a high impact tactic used to create interest or excitement around a specific topic to increase awareness and engagement with the campaign's mission to educate youth about the potential effects of underage marijuana usage. So we created this this execution at our local amusement park here in Denver, Elitch Gardens. You might see it if you're visiting us in Denver and you're driving down Interstate 25. You'll see it going through the city. And we created something called a busload of money, which was created to illustrate the impact of a loss of scholarship to a marijuana charge by illustrating the cost of a 4-year college tuition through a school bus full of footballs, 6,395 of them to be exact. They weren't actually footballs, but it just looked like there was footballs in them. And it was placed at the amusement park, Elitch Gardens, back in August, the weekend before Denver public schools were back in session, with 26,000 park attendees over 3 days. And also we parked it on a street near a local high school in August as well. A lot of youth saw this. We had giveaways for youth to kind of get them over and play. We had a bananas, because your brain's not ripe till you're 25. So some green bananas, here, I'll show you a picture of it. I actually have one right here. A little green banana we were handing out that the kids enjoyed a lot. And we also had a high cost football, a green football that they could throw in a football toss game. So that was fun for them. And overall, over 3,000 items were handed out to youth, kind of get them over and participate and ask questions about it. And it was very successful because we reached a lot of youth and kind of achieved our mission, is we wanted to reach as many youth as possible in this campaign. So how are we performing? How's the campaign as we enter another year of the campaign? The good news is that this approach is working. This not scare tactics, learning from what was done in the 1980s, learning what was done in the 1990s, that in our opinion at least, scare tactics just, they don't work. You're not going to get youth to make changes or to understand what's going on. We've reached, as you see here, over 165 million paid media impressions. Now, impressions doesn't mean 165 million different youth have seen this, but impressions, just views of the content. It really spread by wildfire. We're seeing kids share the content. They don't even recognize it's a government's program or funded by the government, because we want to make that intentionally. We want to make it just look like a fun thing on the web. But we made 165 million impressions through digital video, movie theater ads, mobile gaming apps, digital radio, social media, out-of-home bus and billboard placements, a lot of places. And we also found it important that we wanted to do some local PR to get our local news seeing this, because if the funny thing about when you're targeting youth on the places they go, guess who you're not reaching? You're not going to be reaching the adults, the taxpayers in our city, our community, to see what our city is doing as far as youth marijuana prevention and education. So what we wanted to do is we want to get the news media out to cover this and see this program. So, parents could see what Denver's doing. And we had over 55 million earned media impressions, once again, views, not just clicks on it, and 114 news story placements. The media really, they thought this was neat, just like we did, to see this different approach, the Denver approach to youth education and prevention as the first city with a legalized recreational marijuana market. So we had a publicity. If we paid for that publicity, it would have been about $4 million, which is great to see that success. You might have in your city, if you watched CBS this morning, you might have saw the feature that they did on their national program about the high cost campaign, just kind of showing the Denver approach to youth education prevention, and kind of giving you a much quicker recap than what I'm giving you now as far as youth education and prevention. We also distributed 3,800 campaign flyers, 200 posters, which I showed you, 26 those classroom in the box sits the Denver Public Schools, and we also, there was more when we distributed elsewhere. And that ambient execution campaign I was telling you about, our local amusement park, Village Gardens, just under 2 million impressions. So a lot of kids were there that weekend, the last full weekend of Village Gardens before school started. A lot of kids like to go out and ride the roller coaster, and we reached a lot of them. Total, since we launched the campaign in December of 2017, with high cost paid media, social media, PR, web impressions, over 220 million. So we're very, very proud that we've reached so many youth and kind of getting this message across. And hopefully what's happening is they're seeing more accurate conversations, more of those accurate peer-to-peer conversations that we're really pushing for, that we're really hoping, because the teens just listen to other teens more than they listen to their parents. The other thing we had to do, because we can't just judge this campaign based off of how many impressions we get. We wanted to do a post-campaign survey so we could see, what was the attitudes, what was the thoughts, how was it changing, and so we did a post-campaign survey, a scientific survey, to ask a bunch of teens questions and hear from them. We actually surveyed 537 Denver teens to evaluate the campaign effectiveness and recall, likability. What were they thinking of the survey? Kind of, this is after we did those youth, if we talk to youth creating the survey, we got to talk to them afterwards and see what they're thinking. And then the pool, we want to make sure it really was representative of Denver. Gender and age distribution was equal across the board, pretty much, with what Denver looks like. With 49% of female and then 51% male, and then other transgender and so on were also included. You're seeing 2018 and 2019 here. The 2018 is in the orange and the 2019 is in the green. So it's very similar, the 2 years we've done it, to kind of hear from Denver teens. And the interesting thing about it is we found out our responses were very similar to what the state of Colorado does. The state of Colorado has something called the Healthy Kids Colorado Survey, and they release results every 2 years. The last results we have were from 2017. Well, the survey was actually in 2016, and then the results were released in 2017. And the state did surveying last year, and they're going to release it this year, the results. And in their survey, the state of Colorado, they found that in Denver, 4 out of 5 Denver teens do not use marijuana, which is great. Once again, perception that everyone's using it. It showed that everyone is not using it when it comes to teens. And in our survey, our high-cost post-campaign survey, we did this between November and December this past year. Very similar, 4 out of 5 Denver teens told us they don't use marijuana. And this is, they didn't have to release their name. They could feel comfortable being honest with their answers. We weren't going to share that a kid says he or she used marijuana. So we feel very confident in the results of that, especially since it matched the state survey results exactly with 4 out of 5. Our percentage a little higher, 81% of the teens we surveyed here in Denver, the 537, said that they do not consume marijuana, that's exactly what we're shooting for. And hopefully our campaign has played a role in kids making good decisions. And in case you're curious, you want to see how this happens in Colorado, the Healthy Kids, the state survey, they're going to have their update coming up. We heard, and I might be off on this because they'd be the ones to speak about their campaign. We heard that the new results will probably come sometime mid-year, maybe June. So we'll be very interested to see the new results, the statewide level, and what they do with polling their own Denver teens, if they match what we did from our survey that we just released in a press release last week. You can Google it on high cost marijuana, and you'll see some of the stories and some of the things that people's reactions to what's going on. And frankly, a lot of people were surprised because even with adults, they have this perception because marijuana is legal that everyone is using it, and especially with teens. And the facts, at least what we're seeing from our surveying of youth, is that fortunately, that's just not the case. And that's why it's a message we're going to continue to try to spread to Denver youth and make sure they understand that that perception that everyone's using it is just not factual. So other results we had from this survey we took just past November to December, just a couple months ago, 56% of the teens indicated they were familiar with the campaign. So we are reaching a lot of them, which is great. And they are familiar with that top of mind awareness. And 71% of the teens were familiar after being shown components of the campaign. So the survey company that did this for us to try to get this results, they would show them snippets of it, and teens were asked if they were familiar with the campaign, and 71% of them said yes, they were familiar with it. So that's a very high number we're proud to see. Among teens aware of the campaign, 81% indicated that the campaign discouraged them from using marijuana, compared to 75% when we did our first post-campaign survey in 2018. So we're really happy to see that number go up. An extra year in the market is actually paying dividends because we're reaching more teens. More teens have seen it. If they get on YouTube or anywhere else, the teens are going, they're seeing it. And it was great to see that it made them not want to consume marijuana, that just the facts approach that, here's the high cost, not scare tactics, is working. And 74% of the teens who said they saw the online advertising said they engaged with it by liking, sharing, or talking about it with friends. They are the best. It's what they say, that the best person who can endorse something is someone who's seen something or experienced something. And their greatest endorsers right now are the people who are influenced that campaign. The teens here in Denver, as they saw it, they were liking it, they were engaging it. And it's one thing if you see something on a social media page that a government organization might share. It's another thing when you see something if you're a teen and you see your friend Susie or your friend Johnny who's sharing it on his or her Facebook page, their Instagram account. Maybe they're talking about it on Snapchat. It really gives it credibility when teens are hearing from other teens about it and talking about it. And with that stat, the 74% of teens who saw the online advertising engaging with it by liking, sharing, or talking about it with friends was something we were really happy to see. And another great thing is that the majority of the teens agree that the high cost campaign has a clear message. 89% of them said that. And it's educational. 87% of them thought it was educational. 77% thought it was trustworthy, which is still a very high percentage and a very important thing because we want them to have faith in the campaign and believe it's trustworthy. And 75% of them thought it was likable. So, I guess one of the things we're worried about, we've had such great results with this campaign, it's going to be hard to top this and keep up this pace, but we're going to keep trying because we understand that it's such an important issue for our local community, making sure that youth, that teens aren't using marijuana underage. They wait till they're an adult to decide whether they're going to do this, and especially, when you consider, as we have the campaign, that it impacts brain development till the age of 25. So we think it's really important to continue to have this message out there. One of the things we've learned, if we've said, oftentimes I'm asked about what are the lessons learned, and it's an extremely challenging target audience to reach. I'm sure any of you out there who are doing any type of youth campaign or are watching this, how it is tough to reach them and reach them in a way that's actually going to find an impact. And that's why we think it's really important, if you're going to do any type of campaign, that you talk to youth as you're developing that campaign. Get their attitudes, get their opinions before you develop any type of youth campaign that you're trying to target them for any type of anti-drug, marijuana, or whatever your community or whatever you're doing in your job. If you're working with youth, is that you take the time to develop some type of before you develop the campaign, talking to youth and hearing about their needs and desires. And another challenge we've had, because marijuana is still illegal federally, is advertising about marijuana. Even for educational purposes, can be very difficult to endeavor to navigate. We've had challenges getting the marijuana billboards on our Denver Public Schools school buses, because there was some concern that some people, it's kind of like an analogy I make a lot when it comes to marijuana youth education and prevention, is that it's kind of like sex ed. And maybe when you were younger, there was fears that if you taught kids sex ed, that would mean they were going to all have sex. Well, obviously, we've learned over the years that that's actually not the case. And it's very similar with marijuana, that there is some fear, some hesitancy to talk about marijuana with youth, because some parents feel this, some educators feel this, that if you talk to them about marijuana, they're going to use it. And I'm here to tell you a strong opinion, and just based on facts, is that no, actually, you should talk to them. And so we find that challenge. And we find the challenge with more advertising and national companies, that they are fearful because marijuana is illegal, that if they accept advertising for marijuana, that they might be breaking some law. Because it's not, and they think it is advertising for marijuana, not marijuana youth education. So there is some concern. I just encountered something earlier this week with our campaign, some ad buying we were doing digitally online. And we continue to have those challenges. So it's kind of one of those things, as we're developing this campaign and we continue to execute the campaign, and if you do anything similar, you're probably going to find some challenges in that area. And I mentioned the schools too. I want to reiterate this, because if you're going to do any outreach with schools, and you're talking to them, you're going to really have to spend some time in partnership and making them understand that how your campaign is effective, what you're trying to accomplish. You're going to have to get their buy-in, and that's something we've had to devote a lot of time because of the concerns. Because legalization has different communities, cities, states. I think it's up to 39, 40 states across the country of some form of legalized marijuana now. It's such a new thing, and there's still a lot of concerns, and about educating the youth and what's appropriate and what's not appropriate. And you're going to find that at your local level with schools and high schools and so on. And so that's really one of the things we've learned, that we've had to invest that time and those resources to talk to those people, and continue to talk to them as the years go on, because there's turnover rates in schools. Their principal might leave, a teacher might leave, there might be some other education program leader who might leave. So you can't just do it once. You got to continue to do it throughout the campaign, and continue to focus on that a lot. So that's kind of the recap of what our high cost campaign is. We're continuing to push forward here in the city and county of Denver. We're continuing to evaluate what we're doing now and what we're doing in the future. And I hope that, as you think about, things maybe you might learn from this and what you saw with that, they get across is that, really talking to teens and giving them an opportunity to give their input, and really talking to them where they're at, reaching them where they're at is really important. And that's what we've done in Denver, and it's been very successful. But teens are changing. It's the thing about it. 3 years, 4 years from now, what's going to be the next hot social media channel? What's going to be the next thing kids are doing online? So, continuing to evaluate that and look at that and seeing where this campaign needs to go, where the messaging goes. And we're also eager to see, hopefully, there is more research and development, so we can get more facts about marijuana at a federal level. Hopefully one day, our city has been pushing for that, so we can get the facts to share with youth and teens, so we can expand our campaign. This year already, we're expanding the campaign in 2020 to include more vaping information. That's a real concentrated effort by our part, because we know that vaping is is a huge thing with teens. And so there was a lot of focus in the campaign. You'll see now if you go to the highcost.com, or you can click on the YouTube page, you're going to see a lot of that content coming out here in 2020, a lot more focus on the vaping and given the high cost, the facts about vaping consumption of marijuana and the challenges as far as more concentrated THC and what that can do to youth. Not scare tactics, but just facts.
Awesome. Thank you for your presentation, Eric.
My pleasure.